Hello, everybody. It's Marilyn, CEO and founder of Cosmic Centaurs, and your host for the 4th annual edition of the Cosmic Conference. I'm very excited to have you all with us today. This year, our conference is 5 weeks long, and it's a hybrid model. It includes in-person sessions in the UAE and Saudi, as well as online sessions right here on LinkedIn Live. Our focus is on helping you lead organizations that deliver, and we're exploring this topic through 5 sub-themes: strategy execution, scaling, transformation, capability development, and restructuring. One theme, 1 week. From October 6th to November 11th, I am joined by thought leaders and academics who share their insights, knowledge, and perspectives for a total of 11 online sessions and 5 in-person events. All of these are free to attend, and we're often asked why. The reason is curiosity is one of our values, and we really believe that learning in public and with our community is just an intrinsic part of how we create value for the world and how we create impact. And recently, someone asked us how they could thank us for all this work. So we thought about it, and now we have an answer. If you have a few dollars to spare this month, you can donate to the Cosmic Centaurs Fund. 3 years in the running, it is dedicated to supporting women re-enter the workforce. And for this month and for the ongoing future, as long as it's needed, those funds will be given to refugees in Palestine and Gaza particularly. If you have time to spare, then 15 minutes is all we need. Please take our Future of Teams survey. We've been running it for 3 years as well in partnership with Dr. Connie Hadley, and it's all about understanding what makes people engaged and motivated at work. This week, week 3, our theme is transformation. We're talking about strategy execution in this conference, and in essence, every exercise of strategy execution is an exercise of change management and transformation, which is why 96% of organizations say that they are in some phase of transformation. But we know that only about 30% of those actually succeed. We're here to talk about how to lead through that. Before we begin, as always, show us some love, give this video a like. Maybe you want to tag someone who might enjoy it. And of course, please share your comments and your questions in the feed. Belen and I will try our best to get through these before the session ends. Today's guest, of course, is Belen Settembri. She's an executive and leadership coach and founder of Shift Unfolders. She has an impressive corporate background spanning over 20 years, and her dedication to helping individuals and teams reach their full leadership potential is unparalleled. Belen's unique approach combines executive coaching with mindfulness, yoga, and movement strategies. She empowers her clients to reconnect with their inner compass, fostering self-awareness and grounding them as effective leaders. Belen, I'm very excited that you're joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Good afternoon to all your audience, and thank you for this invitation. It is an honor to be part of this series of conferences that you organize. That it's truly impressive. I was telling you before we started, I've watched some of them. The guests are really well chosen, and also I'm impressed by your the way that you tackle all these different topics in such a grace. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for saying that. We've been running this conference for 4 years, so we've had quite a bit of practice and many mishaps along the way. But I think it's always so wonderful to see how willing all the members of our community, and you included, are to come and learn and have these discussions with us. And really, a lot of this is answering our own curiosity. Every year we pick a different theme because it's the theme that we want to learn more about. And we're really grateful that others are willing to come teach us and share their insights with us. So thank you for that, Belen. Today, you and I will be discussing leading through systemic change. I could not have possibly picked a better person to talk to about this topic. Both you and I are very passionate about understanding how to influence systems. According to the ILO, systemic change means making change that is fundamental. It affects the whole system, the way everything functions. It refers to fundamental, transformative shifts within interconnected systems like organizations. And, I'm very much a believer in holistic leadership that understands the system and tries to operate across all of the various levels. And today, you and I are going to be talking about how to lead through systemic change. A lot of the discussion we'll be having is based on the outcomes of an IBM study called Change Masters, which outlines 4 key factors for successful change that you shared with us. The first, top management sponsorship, honest and timely communication, corporate culture that motivates and promotes change, and lastly, employee involvement. And we'll be going through all of the layers of systemic change together today. So let's start about, our discussion around this framework. Can you tell us more about it and how you've seen it applied to organizational change in your line of work, how these various layers work together in order to create sustainable and meaningful change?
Yeah, of course. When we were discussing before the meeting and we were kind of choosing the topic for today, I was telling you, well, this was done in 2008 and we are in 2023. And it's so interesting because at that moment, I remember that we were already saying, well, change is a constant. And I think this is something that we cannot emphasize even like more in 2023, no? Change. And I like to talk more about transformation that change. It is a constant, as cliche as it sounds. And you were naming what are the top factors that were discovered at that moment. And it's, well, yes, the top management sponsorship, as you were saying. So what does this really mean? Is that be sure that the top management is supporting the change and that they communicate that. That gets linked with the honest and timely communication. So give people the right information about the change. We have the corporate culture that involves and promotes the change. So how meaningful is for me as an employee this change? What are the incentives that I receive being part of this change? And the employee involvement. So do they have some say in this change? Are they heard and seen during the process? Are they asked and the change and the different initiatives that are taken are taken from that feedback that it's received? And I would add, even if it's not in the study, things that I see in the organizations that I work and that are they mainly come from coaching skills. One is the the quality of the questions that we make. So in coaching, we talk about powerful questions, and we've heard like people like you and me that work in this area, like the quality of the questions. It correlates with the quality of our lives. The same happens with the organizations. The quality of the organizations, the change and any transformation, it's linked to the questions that we are able to make ourselves, the real questions. And the other one is listening. Are we really listening? Are we listening to what it is, what people don't say, what the system is telling us? Because I really like to see the whole transformation as a system that has something to say. The change has something to say. In coaching, we talk about the third entity. That can sound a bit like woo-woo, but it's really when we take the market, the people, the organization, the different factors within change. If we put them all together, they want to say something. And that's a work that I do a lot. It's facilitating that conversation with the system, with the third entity. What's trying to happen? What are we becoming? And that's the part. It's crossing that edge from our first identity to our second identity. Who are we becoming as an organization?
Yeah, I think that parallel between the first identity, the second identity is really striking because it maps quite perfectly to, you know, if you said it might sound woo-woo, but I think understanding how these concepts map to each other makes it not woo-woo because it maps perfectly to what the work of strategy is, which is to help us go from one competitive advantage to another. And some call it competitive advantage, and some call it identity, and some call it something else. But fundamentally, these are all the same things. And it's about the becoming. I really love that term that you use. And so you mentioned, that the work that you do in terms of helping leaders listen and really be able to ask the right questions. What else do you think is the most challenging aspect when it comes to leadership within a transformation? What do you see leaders struggle with most often?
For me, the biggest struggle is around the relational part of change. So leaders are involved. a lot in the doing part of the change. No, it's like we know how to measure things, we know how to create a strategy, we know where we are going, we know what we need, what are the resources, or at least we plan well for all of that. But what happens is that the being part of the change and the transformation, it's not taken into account. So really what I see when I go and work with organizations is like leaders, the top management, they need to be involved, but I would say reserve their potential for the being part of the change and less for the doing. So let them be involved in the why. It's creating a stand, a powerful vision that it's able to listen, to be with open heart, to make the right questions and create that vision so other people can follow. And then let others take care of the what and the how. And let them be the ones that create the why.
I love that. Speaking of letting others manage, the what and the how, when you and I spoke, you brought up this idea that there are three types of individuals within organizations, and that it is about, understanding these three types and helping them manage through the transition. And I remember that you had really beautiful names for them, which were different from what we typically hear. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so what we were discussing, it's really based on the work of Arnold Mindel, and it's one of the creators of the process work in psychology. And he talks about it's he's the one that introduces the idea of primary identity and second identity and the edges. I like to see the organization and our lives always we are crossing edges in different situations. And some other people call it like going out of the comfort zone, stepping into new territories. The way that he describes is first one is the leapers. So the leapers are the ones that these kind of people that will do a long queue and a long line to get the last iPhone, for example, before it goes to the market or like as soon as it is launched to the market. It's people that are more restless, that are always jumping into the new, that will be the first ones to say, yes, I want to be part of this change and I want to lead it and I want to go there. Then you have the bridge builders. So these people are the second and third wave. They they are able to step into change, but also they are more cautious. They're in the middle and they are really good to create those bridges between those people that jump into the change and the other ones that need more time. And last but not least, we have the tradition holders. Those people are the ones that look at change and get a bit I wouldn't say in panic, but they are ones that are very cautious. The ones that most probably in the organization, if it's a family organization, like there's a lot in this region, they would have known the founders. They have some kind of relationship with that foundation. They feel that these new people are coming with new ideas that they don't make sense, that they are losing the values. And what I love about these three different, um, I would say, responses to change is that there's no better or worse. We need the three of them. The three of them are vital for any transformation. What we need is to learn how to work with them in different ways and make teams and make being diverse enough to make them work in a way that they collaborate and that they can make some sense of it, because each of these responses have some strengths and some weaknesses.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing. And we call them something else. Obviously if you follow kind of the adoption
Yeah.
curve, you'll hear early adopters and late bloomers and so on. And different people call them different things. We call them champions and devil's advocates. And similar to you, I think that it's every single person in the room brings value, and the devil's advocates,
Mm.
they're actually
The
equally important.
challengers, they are the ones that
Exactly.
challenge. You don't want
That
to
is
have only
right.
followers, right? Like the typical metaphor of the sheep following and everyone is going down the cliff and everyone is following. So you want to have people that follow your ideas. You want to have reframers that look a bit at here, there, and bring new ideas. And you want to have challengers, people that
Exactly.
don't just follow because you tell them.
Yeah. And they're so incredible at finding the flaws in what we're doing. Like they're really great at saying, did you think about this? And you missed that. And by the way, did you know that? But they can only do that if they're metaphorically in the room, right? If they
Mm.
agree to participate. How do you manage to bring them into the room? What's your advice to leaders and managers to bring these individuals who are the most resistant, let's say, to the transformation and make sure that they are contributing even if they're resisting?
Really it's connected to that part of the engagement. No, it's not only I'm part of this project, but how engaged I am. And in coaching, we have something that it's called design the team alliance. Design the team alliance is really creating the right container for things to happen. How does it work? It works creating agreements. Every time that we are up to something, no, like a kickoff from a project, or we, the way typically that companies approach that is that you divide tasks. So some do this, some do that, and you are better in this, you're better in that, and done. This is really about how are we, it's the relational part, it's the container. There needs to happen psychological safety. I can speak my, I can be the challenger, but if once I say something and nobody takes it into account, twice, three times, I just go into apathy and I say, okay, it doesn't care. Like it doesn't really matter. Maybe they pretend that they're asking for my opinion, but they don't really care. So the idea here is to create some kind of communications and work with those different audiences. But the first thing is create the right container with representation of everyone, meaning ranks within the organization, meaning diversity. There's another concept from Arnold Minden that I love that it's called deep democracy. Deep democracy is really listening to what is there and what it is not, even to the dream and hopes. You know, when in reality you have things that you see and things that you don't see. So paying attention to those things as leaders, leading from the field, using your intuition, listening in a way that it's more related to your gut and to your sensing than to facts and what maybe your Excel is saying. And is it easy? No. Does it need a lot of skills? Yes. But complexity was never easy. And that's where leaders need to go.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I often use this analogy when I'm talking about how to manage and lead through complexity, which is that I maybe you already know this, but we as human beings, we all believe. If I ask, anyone in the street, how many brains do you have? I think 99.9% of people would say one.
Mm.
But actually, anatomically, we have three decision-making centers. Now, obviously, the other two brains are not as evolved as the brain that we see here in our head, but we have a brain in our heart and a brain in our gut. And they're both decision-making centers. They have sensors. They're able to collect information, process it, and give a command based on that. And it's no coincidence that in some languages, like the English language, you say decide with your heart or decide with your gut. It's not just a nice, strange artifact of the language. And I think managing complexity requires that you're able to tune into, you can use them as an analogy and a metaphor, right? But to tune into the decisions that your heart or your gut and your head would have made and be able to get all of these parts to communicate with one another.
Yeah, and going out of the corporate world, when we fall in love, we feel butterflies in our tummy, right?
That's right.
And that's the brain, that it's our body telling us that we are attracted to someone. And yes, it's less developed. It's less developed because it's a muscle that we use less. However, the objective with coaching and with facilitation is to have more access to that. And I've worked with leaders that do have access to that, that they know how to stand, they know at least to take these other parts of their bodies into account when making important decisions, because we sense it. And maybe we are not trained in the universities, but I'm sure it happened to you. You go into a room, you are all prepared to present something. It's a great idea, it's the right time. There was a meeting before you enter, and the air, you could cut it with a knife. So people are not ready to receive your idea. You can just ignore it and keep on with your own enthusiasm and continue with presenting your idea, and nobody will be prepared to listen. So leaders need to know when people are ready to listen. And if not, they need to create that container, that agreements, that work to create the right psychological safety and much more, to be able to honestly make these people engaged in the whole process.
I love that. We're going to talk about communication in a minute, but there are two questions from the audience that I think it's worthwhile to bring up at this point. Um, you know, there's a big burden on leaders to lead the transformation. We assume that they all have to jump into being ambassadors, right? That they're willing, that this doesn't take any toll on them. There's a very distorted view of how leaders experience change versus others. Whereas leaders may be themselves navigating a sense of grief through that transformation. There's a question, like, for example, they may refer to the old days or how things used to be. What advice do you have for leaders that are dealing with the grief or the loss that this transformation is engendering, even for them?
I would say be honest and be vulnerable. I mean, vulnerability is one of the things that connects us to other people in the most powerful way. You don't need to have it all together. You don't need to have all the answers. You also don't need to uh, to pretend that you are 100% into it. You can be anyway in your best way, being it, this is the 100% that I have today, and I need you. I need you guys, because we are in this transformation, if even if we want it or not, and I need your help. So vulnerability is one. And the other one, which is really important, and I'm seeing, and I see the requests from a lot of companies asking now, is well-being. I mean, don't ignore the well-being of the people. We are asking a lot from people, and especially in times of change, because a lot needs to be done on top of the usual work that we have, because we are transforming, and that takes a lot of energy. And for leaders, it takes a lot of energy. So don't forget, you need, it's like the metaphor that we all know, no, the
Yeah,
mask
of
in the
course.
plane. I mean, put yourself that mask. Take care of yourself. If not, something will collapse.
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
if I answered, but it's
It's a
really,
marathon,
bottom
not a
line is be
sprint.
real. Yes,
No, I
exactly.
think that's very true. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think being, even for myself as the leader of a small organization, I really had to learn. Whereas when I was an employee, I think I would have let myself go to burnout more easily because the cost of burnout was actually not mine to bear, really. But now that I'm the founder of a business, I cannot burn out, because if I do that, then it's like signing the death arrest of the company. And I mean, obviously not to that extent, but you know what I mean. And so
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
learned to manage my energy and my well-being in ways that I never would have thought about when I was younger, but also when I was not the one in charge. Now, there's a really great question from the audience as well, from Marie. She says, we've spoken about leaders, and we're assuming that these are kind of generally like on the executive side, although leadership and management are two very different problems. But let's say that, in most of our minds, when we say leaders, we do mean the top leadership level. And we've spoken about, the individuals and the employees. But Marie's question is about, what about middle managers? I'm a really stern defender of middle managers personally. I think that we forget them, but actually they are the key to making all of this work, because they're the ones that allow us to really create transformation at scale. They're also the ones who can completely, stop the process. They can be the bottleneck. Do you have a perspective on the role of middle management in transformation?
I have a perspective on leadership. So for me, leadership, the way I define leadership is not even only in the corporate world, in the executive world. For me, a leader is someone that takes care of their themselves. It's someone that wakes up and make choices in a conscious way and with intention. For me, that's a leader. So if you ask me, and I don't want to avoid the question of the middle managers, because I understand that that's the way we typically think about in leadership. It's there's different ways to lead. And in the way that there's one model that I use, which is I think it's a good one. It's the coactive leadership model. And it says that one person has 5 ways to lead. It starts with within. It's within that we choose, and it has 2 movements. One is self-acceptance. So if you're there in the audience, and even you, Marilyn, if you want to do it, you put your hands in your heart, you breathe into it, and this is the part of self-acceptance. Then you put your hands in your hips and open your chest like Wonder Woman. The idea here is your self-authority. It's standing in your self-authority. So what a powerful combination, my self-acceptance and my self-authority. Let's think of all of this in the context of middle managers. Sometimes this leader within needs to choose, and those middle managers sometimes need to be the one that lead in the front, because they're the ones that are communicating everything to the other ones. And they and again, and here the position, if the audience has some kind of knowledge about yoga, is like a warrior two. So the warrior two, one hand points to the front, the other one is behind, and then you are with open heart. The one that goes in the front, it's the one that gives direction, the vision, where we are going. But the one that it's behind, it's very important because it's the connection with people. I can have a clear vision, I can know where I'm going, but I might be going alone. And the open heart is the one that listens and involves others to make this vision real, because we have people following. Then we have leading from beside, which is creating partnerships, synergy and partnerships. Those middle managers need to be in synergy and partnerships with other middle managers. They are not alone. They need to know that they are not alone, because a lot of times they have a beautiful connection with their reportees, but not so much with their peers. And last but not least is the leader from, well, no, we have 2 more, the ones behind. So behind is the one that serves and empowers. So they don't need to do, they have their teams to do part of their work. A lot of times middle managers charge themselves with a lot of things because they respond up, down, to the side. So they are the ones that have the biggest load. The other ones just don't see the whole picture. They are able, the middle managers, to see the whole picture, but still they don't make the whole decisions, and they still need to make the others to make the work. So it's a difficult place to be. And then empowering and let others uh, learn, do things in their way, be more agile, well, everything that we know. And the other one is the leader from the field, which is a bit what we were talking before. It's using their intuition, what we were talking about the other leaders. Use your intuition, sense what it's needed, but don't do it only for the others. Everything we need to do it for ourselves first. So that's why the leader from within is the one that chooses. Was it clear, or were you lost with all these?
I love that. No, I'm not lost at all. I mean, I don't know about our audience, but I love that, because I think that, the first and the key point that you're making is your job title and whether or not you're a leader are two very different problems. And I said that in the beginning. I'm like, I think everybody can be a leader, but let's assume that, middle managers can be leaders too. Individuals can be leaders too. And I think that oftentimes in anything that we perceive to be strategic or organizational, we leave the responsibility of leading to the people who have the job title that says they're the head of something, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
they're the VP or whatever. But truthfully, and in all of my kind of conversations with people in the organizations that we support, I also try to encourage these different, as you frame them beautifully, these different ways of leading that don't require a job title. I have actually never felt like I was not a leader. I think my whole career, even when I was in my first job, I felt like a leader, and I never needed permission to be a leader. I just did it within my remit, within my space, and what made sense for my role. And I think what you're saying beautifully is that there are many different ways to express that leadership, be it through support, partnership, being in the field, like all of these different ways of exteriorizing that leadership. But it doesn't matter where you sit in the organization, you can still be a partner and a leader in the process. And I think that's really such a strong image. And I always say, ask for forgiveness, not permission, and that makes you a leader. um, Beautiful. Thank you. And a great question from the audience too. I want to take us to the next theme, on that kind of that 4 bullet point list. Another big component of successful transformation is great communication. The data says that organizations with great communication programs outperform their peers by 3.5 times. So that's not like a little nice to have on the side. 3.5 times better performance than your competitor. That's incredible. And so, in terms of communication strategies, like how do you approach establishing the right communication strategies, internal, external, in order to ensure that the transformation and the strategy are well communicated, that people are aligned, but also that there's like a feedback loop to make sure that everybody's being heard?
This question is one of those, we coaches, sometimes people say, I want a coach that tells me the answer. And a lot of times when I'm doing the chemistry session, or I'm in a company working with the HR, and they tell us, okay, which one is your approach? Because these coaches that never give answers, we don't want them. That we want the ones that give answers. And I would say this is one of the questions that it doesn't have one answer. So the way I see it is, we need to go to the organization, ask good questions, hold for them the mirror so they can see what is possible. What are the different channels that they have? What are the different audiences that they have? Where is the resistance? Where do they feel uncomfortable communicating? What are their fears? Because a lot of times it's not that they are not willing, it's just that they don't know, or they are afraid, or what if I do, I tell them things that they are not ready to take, or I'm kind of loading responsibility to the people that I should have. So it's really asking the right questions for them to understand what's the right communication for that company. What I think, and comes really from my background. So I started as a journalist, and I always say that that was such a good foundation, because I learned how to make good questions and to listen. Is really, there's no such thing as over communication. Like I told them, or it was there, we sent an email, right? it's it's really, there's no such thing as over communication. It can be in different ways. It needs to be adapted to different. It also, it doesn't need to be only from the top management. It really needs to be from everyone. And we don't like to learn that something is happening in our company from a third person that it's not part of our company. That doesn't feel good. Or a newspaper, or a post in LinkedIn. So that would be my answer.
I love that. Actually, I don't know why this week I've been having a lot of discussions with a lot of people about the difference between a coach and a mentor, and explaining that, as you just did, coaches are not there to provide you with answers. They're there to help you yourself answer the right questions. And as you say, every organization is different, has different employee population, they have different needs, they want to be spoken to in different languages across different channels. There are some very tangible things that you can find out, right? And then there are the more intangible things that you really have to want to listen to in order to figure it out. I'm just gonna, for our audience, we actually have a free resource on our website. Maybe Tala can drop the link in the comments, which is a very simple internal comms survey, because some of them are hygiene things like, where do you want us to talk to you? As you said, which leaders do you want to hear more from? You know, sometimes we don't remember that actually there's a lot of different people communicating, and internal comms isn't just about the channels we control, it's also about those we don't, aka the humans running around in the building. And I think even just asking those questions in very simple terms and actually doing something when we hear the answer is the first step forward. And the other thing I'll say, so I've been having the conversation also about a difference between a coach and a mentor. And in the companies that we support, whenever I'm working with the leaders there, I say, like, look, I'm not a coach, so I can only tell you how I would do things. I cannot tell you or help you arrive to the answer of how you would do things. But if I were to answer this same question from the perspective of a mentor, not a coach, um, I would say that a lot of what we do, so you said, you know, you come from journalism, and so you've learned to ask really good questions. And I come from product and marketing. And what I've learned to do is to design brands. And so when you think as a brand person, you think of every touch point, right? Like if you are the person managing any brand, pick it in the world, you're going to make sure like that the store, the packaging, the way that the person receives you when you walk in, how customer service answers the phone, what's on your website, your tone of voice, the way your pictures are designed, you know, you're going to make sure that all of these different touch points tell the same exact story. And so what we do a lot is, because we come from that world, we've kind of taken the lessons that we learned in the marketing and comm space and then flip them inside. What often happens, and you really pointed that out, is that there is so much inconsistency in what employees hear between the internal channels and the external channels, between one manager and another, between the CEO and their boss, that actually they don't know what to believe anymore. And if we really work on that consistency, if we treat our internal brand with the same care that we treat our external facing brand, then we can start to solve the problem of good communication. I think another big piece as well is that people come to work because this aligns with how they want to bring value to the world, right? So one of the questions that I also wanted to ask you, and of course we know how important culture is in kind of being a fundamental, you know, supporter and promoter of change. Um, and we know that, you know, a lot of organizations probably come to you saying, we need to change our culture, and we need to make sure that our employees feel aligned with this, that they find meaning in their job. And I wonder if you could just speak towards, how do we do that? How do we make culture explicit? How do we change culture? Is culture intrinsic? Can we really change it, or can we design a new culture? How does that occur? And how does culture as part of this bigger system contribute to transformation and change?
I love that question, and it has so many different layers. So one of the layers is that, and we had the opportunity to discuss this topic before, you and me. So culture is really like a living organism. So it is there, and it has its own life. We can work on it, but it has its own life, and we need to take really that into consideration. So the way that I normally do it is like tapping into assessments that I know that they work really well. Like for example, I use the collective leadership assessment, and it has dimensions that have been researched to be like the contributors for an efficient culture, and others that some reactive tendencies that they, when they're present, they create a culture that it's not the positive one. I don't like to talk about positive and negative because it's not that, but at least less efficient. So this assessment, for example, what it gives you is that it shows you where you are now versus your ideal, which is really nice because you have your conversation is a different way. Culture has so many things like values of the company, what's the vision, what's the mission of the company, who are the people, how do the people come to work, what do they say about their job, what is the contact with the customers. Culture is created from the job interview, the onboarding, compensation, career development, and the exit interview. It's all the journey and much more that it's there that I'm missing. So it's everything that it is within the company. What this gives us, this kind of assessment, is it elevates the conversation to things that we understand and that we know and that we can take responsibility. And from there, we start creating and choosing what are the things, what is the gap, what's getting in the way from where we are now and from where we want to go. However, we need to understand that there's a context, and those people live in that context, and we cannot ignore it. We both work in this region. There's a big context happening now. It's even at the moment that I need to post something or talk about something, it's difficult because I know that it, there's something happening that it's so big that we need to take that into account too, and people are suffering. And culture is no more than people that work together. So I don't remember well again your question, and I don't know if I'm answering it, but I think the bottom line is that uh, there's some there's a lot of models to work with culture. The one that I understand and I love, uh, and because I know how it's a deep one. It's not just scratching the surface. A lot of times what happens with culture is that, okay, let's identify the four main values, let's create a vision and a mission, and let's put it somewhere in a nice way people can see it. You know how it is, like pictures in my room, I don't see them anymore. They are there, I don't even know what they say because they've been there for a long time, and I might have read it when I hung them, and then I forgot. So it's paying attention, it's being in charge of what's emerging, and again, who are we becoming as an organization. Like it's like a living organism, a plant. You need to water it, you need to take care of it, and if not, it will not go to the places that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, for me, it almost breaks my heart when I see culture being treated in a maybe superficial way or a very limited way. Oh, we'll just do these activations and these events, and here's our values. Can you design an activity to tell everybody what they are? I really like the almost the anthropological perspective on culture, and that's how I try to get people to imagine it, which is to say, suppose that 200 years from now, an anthropologist discovers your company and the building, the offices, but also the emails that you sent each other, the meeting minutes, the decisions that you made, the KPIs that you chose to look at, the performance reviews. And by looking at this artifacts actually that remain, in the same way that we reinterpret what pharaonic Egypt must have been like by looking at these, will they be able to reinterpret what you think is the culture by using these artifacts? And I think that that allows you, as you say, to go deep into culture actually needs to live everywhere. And actually, the first advice I give people is don't print your values and put them on the wall, because that gives you the illusion that everybody knows them. But in fact, everybody just walks past them. And I've been in companies where the values were right there in front of the employees and they could not recall them, because that is not how you express culture. You have to let it run deep. And I think that's a really beautiful, thing that we both share. And I think we both share this kind of holistic and systemic approach to things, and not letting things just sit at the surface. Thank you for that, Belen. And with that, we're coming to the near the end of our time together. And for all of our guests, we are asking the same 3 questions at the end of our sessions. Are you ready for our rapid fire?
Yes, I love it. I feel like being one of the guests of Brené Brown. She does the
Yes,
rapid.
she does the same thing. That's true. She also, I
Yeah.
think, makes them talk about their favorite songs, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
they do a like a Spotify list with a
That's
different
right.
songs. Yes, yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah, similar, but this time focused on strategy. So the first one is, can you complete the sentence? Great strategy is.
Asking better questions and be ready to listen.
I love that. That's a really great point. What is the one leadership quality that you think is most needed to improve an organization's ability to deliver on its strategy?
I think the leadership quality is it's really going have leaders that are able to go and connect to their leader within, as I was explaining before, and with intention and in a conscious way, and make choices. What is the dimension that they need to use in the different situations? Do I need, in this case, to lead from the front? Do I need to create partnerships and synergies? Do I need to empower and serve the system and my employees? Do I need to be in the field and sense and use my intuition to read the whole situation and offer what I'm seeing? I think that's
Yeah.
the best, to be more situational.
Intentionality. Yeah,
Yes.
intentionality, adaptability, understanding your context. And then
And
last
I
but
would
not
add,
least,
sorry, I know that it's a rapid fire, but it's like it needs to come from all the brains that you said before. It needs to be come from open heart, from being honest. And that doesn't mean that you're always nice. An open heart is not only about
yeah,
loving everyone and being it's being honest, genuine, authenticity. That's the top thing in the leadership circle in this in the universal model of leadership that I told you. Be authentic. It's the world is full of fake people, and nobody we know them already, right? It's a strategy that doesn't work anymore. So we smell fake. So be authentic.
I love that. So many different qualities to unpack here. And then the last one is the one book about strategy or strategy execution or even leadership that every leader should read today.
Yeah, I you cannot see it, but it's like
Proactive leadership.
coactive leadership, 5 ways to lead. It explains a bit what I was telling before. And the co and the active is the co is the being part, the relational part. The active is the doing part. The hyphen in the middle is the dance between both of them. We can have a lot of a clear vision, a theory. We can know everything, and we don't act upon that. I can have a lot of information, but if I don't act upon that, it's just information and theory. The active part is I can be doing a lot. I'm performing, but it's like the hamster in the wheel, doing, 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 doing,
Yeah.
doing, and always in the same place. So it's the dance, it's the balancing act between being and doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I'm sure I said this week, in fact, maybe even with Wissam earlier in the week. I feel like personally, my journey in leadership has always been, and every time I see my coach, it's to say there is this balance that I'm trying to find between this and that. And sometimes I feel like leadership is always a balancing act between, the present and the future, the being and the doing, the engaging, loving empathy, but the performance and, being hard on people because you need to push them. And I think that's the question that is never fully answered, but also is such a beautiful part of the journey. So thank you so much for leaving us with that insight, Belen. I always find our conversations, they give me a lot to think about, and they in themselves are very organic and have a lot of depth. And I'm sure that our attendees will all leave with something that they're going to want to think about tonight. And with that, thank you so much.
Thank you so much to you, to your team, to the work that you're doing, and to your audience. Thank you, Marilyn. It was
In
really a joy and an honor to have this conversation with you today.
Likewise. Indeed, thank you to all of our attendees. There's a few questions we didn't have time to cover. Maybe we'll go and answer them in writing later. The video will be available on my LinkedIn profile, but also in just a few minutes on our YouTube and our website, and also as a podcast. So if anyone wants to re-listen to it or share it with someone, that'll be there soon. All of our sessions are free to attend, as I said earlier, but you can give back by donating to our fund dedicated to supporting women to re-enter the workforce, or by taking our Future of Teams survey. Both links are in the comments. And of course, you can always go on our website and subscribe to our newsletter. This actually brings us to the wrap of week 3. And wow, it's
Well
raining
done.
madly. I don't know if you can hear the
Yes,
torrential
yes.
rain in Dubai right now. But yes, on Monday, we kick off week 4 of the conference, and it's all about capability development. And we start with Susan Chartouni about leading in a global organization right here on LinkedIn Live, Monday, October 30th at 5 p.m. UAE time. I hope everybody joins us. Until then, see you soon.